Good morning and welcome to Theology with Mr. L. I am Mr. L. Today we're going to be covering an 8th grade topic, an 8th grade class. And so that really, all that means that we're covering the sacrament of confirmation. I'm answering and addressing specific questions that students had with regards to the sacrament. So, here we go. I have two questions. They're basically saying the same thing, but it's important because I have two kids that asked them. So it means it's more than one person's thinking it. So they say this, they say, why is the bishop only allowed to confirm? And then the other question is, why can only a bishop confirm someone? So basically the same question. It's a really great question. It's a really fair question. But I don't know if it's necessarily the right question. So let's kind of get into it a little bit here. Almost forgot my marker. So let's kind of ask ourselves, well, is that the right question to be asking? I mean, is the correct question, why can only a bishop confirm someone? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe we should also be asking ourselves, well, who, if anyone, can? Because it's not wrong, but it's not right, and we'll kind of get into that here. So the first question we should be asking ourselves, and the first term we kind of need to understand, is the term minister. And what do we mean by that? So, minister. Right? In this context, what we mean by that term minister is simply this: the one who administers or performs, or if you will, gives the sacrament. Right, the one who administers, or like I said, gives, performs. I don't really like that word gives necessarily, but at least you can understand where I'm going with it, right? So the minister, right? So we have to understand that within any sacrament, there's really, well, not most sacraments, there's kind of an ordinary minister and then an extraordinary minister, right? So with the case of this particular sacrament, the sacrament of confirmation, all right, the ordinary minister, the one who ordinarily or normally performs the sacrament, is in fact the bishop, right? So that's really important to understand, right? So you're absolutely correct in that the ordinary minister is the bishop, right? That they are the ones who ordinarily, normally perform the sacrament. So let's put that up here. Now, the question we can kind of ask ourselves here, and this is a question that was asked, is why, right? Why is it that the bishop is the ordinary minister of the sacrament? Well, it actually goes all the way back to the early church, the ancient church, really. And in that we have to understand, back in the early church, that when people would receive their sacraments, it was very different than how it was today, right? Today, we see babies getting baptized. This is normally, right? We see babies getting baptized, right? And then, maybe middle school, high school, you receive confirmation and kind of go on from there, somewhere in between you receive the Eucharist and all that kind of stuff. Well, the reality was that back in the early church is that, well, most people who were entering the church were adults, right? Adults, and as well as their families. And so when you would enter the church, you would receive all your sacraments, right? It was very common to kind of see it done that way. That was actually how it was normally done that way. So what was happening was that early on in the church, the people who were giving the sacraments, if you will, administering the sacraments, right, were oftentimes the bishops, and it was most fitting, right, that the bishop would perform the sacrament, well, because the bishop would be the one who would be baptizing, right? We see that in Scripture, right, that who is going out and baptizing, right? Predominantly, we see the bishops, right? We see the apostles. So, in the early church, this tradition continued, right, in that the bishops would perform the sacrament of baptism, and then they would continue to perform the other sacraments as well, right? And oftentimes, those would be received pretty much at the same time. Now, today, as we know, right, baptism is usually done with infants, and confirmation done with teens. Despite that kind of shift, which happened over time, certainly after, the legalization of Christianity and things like that, when it became more accessible, and something that more people could do, and that kind of a thing, without fear of death and all these other things. So, having a baby baptized and then kind of waiting, later on for the confirmation. It's just a product that happened kind of slowly over time, right? Now, we don't need to get into the history of the sacrament, its development, how at times it was kind of lost or even forgotten about, or just so closely done with the sacrament of baptism that it almost at times throughout history kind of lost its identity. We're not going to get into that. That's not really what this question's about. But what I'm saying is kind of, if we go back and look at the early church, the idea of the bishop being the primary minister, the ordinary minister of the sacrament, comes from that early church idea, and it just kind of evolved into what we have today. So that's kind of why we see the shepherd of our diocese, right? And think of it like this, right? That the shepherd of our diocese, the head of our diocese, the bishop, is the one kind of fully welcoming everyone into the church, right? As we talked about in an early class, this is one of the sacraments of initiation. Depending on when you receive it, it could either be the second or the third. For you guys, in my class, this is the third sacrament of initiation you'll receive. So in a sense, it's kind of the completion of your initiation. So understanding that, well, it makes sense, right, that the leader of your church here in the Diocese of Gary, right, that your leader, your shepherd, is going to be the one giving you this, fully welcoming you into the community, right? So there's a lot of things there, right? It's very fitting of that your shepherd, your bishop, would be the one kind of guiding you and leading you into the church in this way. So that's kind of one of the reasons why the bishop. The other thing to consider is this, that the bishop isn't the only one who can perform the sacrament. So in this sacrament, like some of our other sacraments, there's also extraordinary ministers. And an extraordinary minister, in this case, is a priest. Right? So, don't think of extraordinary as like more than, greater than. It's just extraordinary, right? It's something other than what is ordinarily done, right? And so, normally, as we've been stating and talking about, right? Normally, ordinarily, right? The one who performs the sacrament is the bishop. But in this case, an extraordinary minister can be a priest. Now, here's the other thing, right? They need permission from the bishop. So it's not like priests can just go around confirming whoever and doing whatever. They first need permission from their bishop in order to confirm someone. So this is a really common example that I'm going to give you. Coming right up, in a few weeks. And it's Easter, right? Just think about it logistically for a second, right? In the church, every single Catholic church in a diocese, more or less, is going to have people entering the church through the RCIA program, right? Which is the rite of a Christian initiation for adults, right? It's how an adult becomes a Catholic, right? So, all over the diocese, on the same night, all of these people are going to be entering into the church, meaning that they're going to be receiving their sacraments. They're going to be receiving, some of them are going to be receiving confirmation. Okay, well, how is it possible that a bishop could then be everywhere at once? They just can't. It's impossible, right? A bishop just simply physically cannot be everywhere they need to be for the church to kind of thrive and grow and do everything it needs to do on that Easter Vigil. It'd be chaos. It'd be crazy. So, a really common example is at the Easter Vigil, right? Where the bishop will then give permission to the priests of his diocese to then confirm those who are entering the church at the Easter Vigil. So if you've ever been to an Easter Vigil, you've actually seen a priest give the sacrament. And as you know, well, Easter comes every year, right? And so it's something that's fairly common, right? As far as, extraordinary circumstances go, it's pretty normal, right? So yes. The ordinary minister is the bishop, right? They are the ones who ordinarily normally perform the sacrament. But that's an example in which a priest could perform the sacrament, and in fact does perform the sacrament when it's applicable. And so there you go. So why can only a priest or a bishop, like the question asked? Well, that's not really the question, right? As we kind of just discussed, right? That yes, the bishop is the ordinary minister of the sacrament. However, a priest can perform the sacrament when given permission. A very clear example of that is just simply seen in the Easter Vigil, right? When adults are entering the church. So there you go. Those answer your questions. I hope that answers your questions. If you have any other questions, please feel free to just put them in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe. And remember, this is Theology with Mr. L. Have a great day.